Welcome. This is Meet NVivo. Take control of your survey data with NVivo 11 for Windows. I'll be your host for this session. My name is Stuart Robertson. I'm an NVivo consultant and trainer, and I've been working with NVivo for the past 15 years. I came to NVivo during my doctoral work and just haven't left. Been having such a good time with the software and found it to be such a powerful, powerful tool. With NVivo 11 for Windows, QSR has 3 versions. There is a starter, a Pro, and a Plus edition. With the survey data work that we'll be looking at today, we will be focused on the Pro and Plus versions. So NVivo 11 for Windows Pro and Plus have the capability of working with the survey data. Although our focus today is on survey data, NVivo does have a number of data types, file types, with which it can work. In the Pro and Plus versions, they range from your traditional documents and PDFs to videos, audios, looking at pictures, and of course survey data that we will today, as well as being able to work with some bibliographic programs, including Zotero, Mendeley, RefWorks, and EndNote, and through nCapture that comes with NVivo, being able to work with web pages and especially with LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter data. Our agenda for today's session, we'll be looking at importing a survey, coding options. We'll talk about some of those options that you have once you have your data in there, incorporating other types of data, and using attributes and coding queries with your survey data. When you think about NVivo and the research process will always start out the same. You'll gather the information, the data that you need to work with. In this case, you'll then import it into an NVivo project, and in there you can explore and analyze your data, as well as visualize and share your findings. All right, let me take a moment here. I'm just going to swap screens and come up with NVivo. For the presentation, I will be using NVivo Plus. The options that I'll be showing, most will work on both Pro and Plus, but I will point out additional features available in the Plus version so that you can gauge that based on the needs of the projects that you're working on. NVivo itself is a software program that allows you to work with unstructured non-numeric data, but in this world of mixed methods, of which surveys are definitely can be a large part, sometimes you actually have both structured and unstructured data together. And we'll take a look at that, working with that inside of NVivo. I'll go ahead here and create a blank project. I'm just going to call this my survey project. And I'll go ahead and click OK. Where I'm using the standalone version of NVivo, it will create a project file in my Documents folder. And any of the data that I bring into the project will be stored in that folder, as well as any of the work that I do that can be saved within the project itself. Toward the end of the presentation, I'll talk briefly about the NVivo for Teams, which would incorporate a little bit of a server option. Let me go ahead here, clean up my screen a little bit. For those of you who may not be familiar with NVivo, if you're looking at the workspace and you're thinking, gee, it looks awfully familiar. NVivo's, for Windows, the workspace was modeled after Microsoft Office and in particular Outlook. So if you haven't had a chance to use it before, at least the workspace will have some familiarity to you to help you get started. On the left-hand side is the navigation view, and it's here where I can organize any of the data that I'm bringing in or working with within my project. I can also move to other parts of the software depending on what my needs are. Anything that I bring into NVivo goes into the internals folder, and depending on the amount of information or data that I'm bringing in, I can create subfolders to help organize that information. So in this case, I'll just right-click and create a new folder and just label it Survey for right now. When I find I'm ready to bring in my survey, I can select the survey folder here, come over to what later will be referred to as the list view because it will list any of the items I have available from my selected folder. I can right-click and I can choose to import. One of my options is to import a survey. From there, I have the ability to bring in Microsoft Excel files. I can also bring in text files, .txt and CSV files. If I am conducting my survey via SurveyMonkey with one of their paid option accounts, or if I am, apologize there, let me bring that back, or if I'm working with Qualtrics, QSR has teamed with both of them to allow you to be able to access your SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics account from within NVivo. So basically, from those choices, you would be able to authorize your computer to be able to access those accounts and bring in the information directly. If you're using a different survey tool, simply exporting your results as an Excel spreadsheet will give you the ability to be able to bring that data or information in. In this example, that is the choice that I'm going to be choosing. I can head out to my data here, and I'm going to choose my survey data. I'll go ahead and click Open. When you're importing a survey in both Pro and Plus, NVivo Windows Pro and Plus, you can, you'll be brought to an import survey import wizard, which will ask you some questions about the data that you wish to bring in. First of all, it tells you that NVivo will take your respondents and store them as cases. For those of you who are unfamiliar with NVivo, data inside of NVivo that you're breaking apart, your data that you're bringing in, is stored in what are called nodes. And you can think of a node as a bin. It's a place where I can bring and store, put and store data that I'd like to go back to later on. And these bins are built around thematic or unit analysis topics or nodes. A case is just a specific kind of node that is created around a unit of your analysis. So in a survey, the unit of analysis is typically the individual who has gone and completed the survey. So NVivo will take all of that data for each person, all of their open-ended responses, put it into their case, and later on in the next step, it will take the closed-ended questions that are in the survey and use those as attributes. So that you would later be able to look at subgroups of your participants based on certain attributes that they have indicated in the survey. I'll also talk a little bit later about how the attributes could actually be their responses to a Likert scale. With the open-ended questions, what NVivo will do is create nodes so that everyone's answer to a specific open-ended prompt will be gathered together, and that way you can open that node and be able to focus on a specific topic, a specific prompt, look for patterns and trends within it, and even begin to create subnodes, or what NVivo refers to as child nodes, depending on the needs of your research question. In this step, there's nothing that you need to do. It's just simply informing you of how the data will be parsed out. I'll go ahead and click Next. NVivo is showing me the data that I'm looking to bring in. In this workbook, there were multiple worksheets, so I need to select the worksheet that has the survey data that I wish to work with. So in this example, it is the survey data tab itself. You also have the ability to let NVivo know how many rows are used for question headers. 0, 1, or 2. And if you're working with dates, if the date order, how it has been recorded, so NVivo knows how to interpret. In this case, I'm going to leave these exactly the same. I'll go ahead and click Next here. In the third step, NVivo lets me know where it's going to be storing some of this information, and when possible, I can make changes in this. So for example, the cases are going to be stored in the Cases folder under a node called Survey Data. You need to select a unique identifier. With this, this particular data, respondent was the column where the unique identifier was. You do want to make sure that you have a unique identifier for each person in your survey, so that NVivo can parse that data out. Typically, especially those that you're bringing in from a survey software, will have a generated respondent identification. But if you're putting together some from, say, a paper and pencil survey that you're putting into Excel, make sure that you do have that column. I have run into instances where that has not been the case, and we had to backpedal a little bit. In NVivo, it creates classifications, and it's under classifications that all of your attributes will be stored. So in this example, it's going to call this classification survey respondent. Let me go ahead and click Next here. NVivo looks at the data and will make an assumption, make a guess as to what type of data, if it's closed-ended or open-ended. You do have the ability at this point to make adjustments so that if you need to move something from one to the other, you certainly can. You also have the ability to choose not to import pieces of data that you may not necessarily need. So for example, I don't necessarily need the return date, so I'm not even going to bother to bring it in. This is helpful, especially if you're working with, perhaps you're looking at a specific part of a larger survey that certain questions were specifically designed for your research, where you might not need to bring in the entire survey, but just the portions that are most meaningful to you and your work. Let me go ahead and click Next here. At this step, this is where there's a difference between Pro and Plus. In NVivo Pro, I would have clicked Finish on the step before and had begun the process of bringing in the data. In NVivo Plus, I have an extra step. The reason being that NVivo Plus has algorithms. Two, to be specific. One is used to go through the data and generate a list of possible themes that it finds within the data for your review and acceptance as needed. It also has an algorithm that can go through the data and begin to look for sentiment. Be able to take comments and organize them up to, there's two layers, two levels of positive, two levels of negative, ability for it to do that there. For those of you who are interested, actually just yesterday I did a whole piece on the auto coding for Windows, so that is one of the sessions that we do. Depending, again, because I'm in the Plus version, I have the option as to whether or not I wish to bring those pieces in. I will bring them in just so that you have a sense of what those options look like, and I'll go ahead and finish this process. So NVivo's getting ready to import my survey, going through that process, creating attributes, nodes for open-ended questions, going through the auto-coded themes and auto-coding sentiment. I'll go ahead, it's finished the process, so I'll close this. And what it's doing is it's preparing some of the results. In NVivo Pro, what I would see is the data that I've brought in. So we're looking at the data. The gray shaded columns would be the closed-ended questions. They are being brought in as classifying data. The white shaded columns are the open-ended responses. They're being brought in as codable data. And depending on my needs, I can, with codable data, select data and code it just like I would any other type of text-based data inside of NVivo. What else I have here, the other pieces that I'm looking at, have to do with the fact that I used the auto-coding techniques. So for example, let's see if I can move this over here. If I come back to look at, apologize, I've got one of my little menus in the way here. As I'm working my way back, I can start to take a look at the results gathered from the auto coding. So for example, because of the sentiment analysis, I can start to see each of my major questions and the breakdown of negative, positive, neutral, and mixed comments. It has also provided a matrix so I can see the number of comments that were placed in either a negative or a positive category. One of the nice things about a matrix is that I can double-click on a cell and be able to see the data behind that particular number. If I continue moving backwards here, I can also see the number of the different topics or themes that NVivo has generated through the thematic analysis. And continuing back, I also have a breakdown of the number of themes around each of the questions. Again, those last few were generated because of the algorithms. What would happen with both Pro and Plus in the node section, I would have a node that's a folder that says survey data, and NVivo would have created a node for each of my open-ended questions so that I could then be able to double-click, open up that node, and see the responses from all of my participants in one place. It also would create in the cases folder a case, a subfolder for survey data, and each of my participants would have a case, and this is in both Pro and Plus. If I right-click on a particular case and I go to the attribute values, I can see that I have values assigned based on the closed-ended questions that I imported. And that, again, this particular piece is both Pro and Plus, just so that you can see if there's no classification, I don't have access to any attributes. The minute I classify something, I have access to the attributes that are under that classification. And just to show you that classification itself, if I come over to the classification section, case classifications, all of these attributes were generated from the closed-ended questions in my survey. One last view, if I'd like to look at all of that information collectively, I can open up a case classification sheet and I can see all of that information for each of my participants. So simply importing the survey, you have set yourself up for being able to do a lot of work with the data that you have there. As I said, I can continue to do some manual coding of some of these pieces. So for example, if I go to my nodes and I look at my survey data, I can open up a node, say about the water quality, and being able to now create subnodes or child nodes. So I may take a look at it and see that there's some comments that deal with pollution. So about the water quality down east, I may wish to take that response, I can drag it over and create a new node looking at my survey data, water quality, I'll tuck it under there and I'll call it pollution. And if I find any others as I'm looking through here, I can begin to take those comments and be able to drag and drop them and add them to that particular node. So I do have a number of coding options as I'm looking at it. To show you with the auto-coded themes, NVivo has generated via the algorithm these as potential themes that I might wish to take a look at. Again, as I'm looking at these, if there are any in here that I feel are not necessarily appropriate or really help me look at my data, I can always right-click and I can always delete a node. There are also potential subnodes added underneath, and I can review any or all of these. And if I do find that there are comments that may not necessarily be pertinent, I always have the ability to select them and simply uncode to be able to pull them out. The sentiment analysis is right here. And even with that, as I go into one of my nodes for sentiment analysis, if I see something that I think really should be placed in a different sentiment, I certainly can select that data and be able to move it into another sentiment category if I wish. Where I have all of this data that has come in, even from the beginning, I can start asking questions. I'm going to just close some of these tabs that I've opened because there's one in particular I wanted to begin to share with you. That if I'm looking at some of this initial coding, maybe I'd like to be able to see what my participants, there was a Likert scale in there about the pace of development. And there was also an open-ended question about what types of development would you like to see. I might be working under the assumption that people who thought the pace of development was too fast would be anti-development. So they wouldn't like to see any development. Now I want to be able to check and see if that's perhaps just my bias coming into play. So I can come to a coding query because I've created these nodes, and I can look at the data coded at the node for the types of development people would like to see, types of development I would like to see. And I'll add another layer here. I only want to see it for people who said the pace of development was too fast. So coded at any case where, and I'll come down to the pace of development, equals value. And again, I have a number of options there. So if I'm using integer values, I have things such as greater than, equal to, less than. I'll have equals value here, too fast. And I'll go ahead and run the query. And if I take a look at the information that I have here, I can see that there were 47 people who said the pace of development was too fast. When I look at their answers to what types of development would they like to see, I can see that my initial belief was off base. My data does not support that. They are not anti-development, but they are very specific about the types of development they want to see. And again, this is very quickly, I'm already jumping into looking at my data and getting into the analysis process. One of the other ones, another tool that will help with some of this survey data too, is the matrix coding query. What some people will do if in the plus version, and I do want to make sure that I'm very, very clear about that. It's the sentiment analysis and the thematic coding are in the plus version. So in that case, because I'm using that, I could create a matrix coding query where I could take my nodes that were generated from the auto coding, and I'm just going to build, just select 4 or 5 of them here as a sampling. And in the columns of the matrix, I could then take the sentiment and, again, generated by an algorithm. And when I run this now, I can start to see how many comments, what's under what sentiment I had for each of those topics. And it's a great way if you have a large amount of data and you need to get a very quick overview. This is typically for clients that I work with. That's the situation where these especially come into play. And then I can double click on a matrix cell to be able to see the data that's behind it. So again, it does not replace you as the researcher, those 2 options, but it gives you tools, especially if you're working with big data, to be able to bring some of those pieces in. And once again, as I said, I always have, if I go back to my sources here, I always have my survey data available so that if I just simply want to be able to bring that information in and then start coding it, I can do just that. One last thing I just want to share with you. Oftentimes I get asked the question, well, what happens if I have other data that's coming in as well? Oftentimes surveys may be used to get an initial sense of what's happening, and then, for example, you may select survey participants to then do a follow-up interview. So in a case like that, one of the things that I would suggest, if possible, would be to bring in the survey first and create the cases just like I did. So it's very quick and very easy. And once you've created those cases, later on, if I'm bringing in some interviews, so let me just create a new folder here called follow-up interviews. And I conduct one, and I go and I import that document. And I'll just click on Bobbers here. When I'm bringing this in, if I know Barbara is participant 001 in my cases, I can code this source at specific cases, and I'll choose DE001. Oh, I'll select my classification. She was initially a survey respondent. And now if I go back to my nodes and back to my cases here, I can have her tucked under that particular case if I wish, or another option that I can have is I can cut and merge those 2 together. I can also, if I'm brought in a number of surveys in one time, I can go to any of the surveys that I've brought in and choose to code that survey and select the appropriate node. So that, if you're bringing in, if you have field notes or if you have follow-up interviews or other information that you're bringing in, what I find, it's nice to be able to bring those together, because now her interview has access to the exact same attributes as her survey responses, and I didn't have to go through and assign those values. It did it just simply by my putting the interview into the case. Because those attributes were already associated with the case, this interview took on all those same values. All right, let me go ahead here. I'm going to switch back to the presentation for a moment here and move ahead a little bit. Give you some information about NVivo. One of the first things I like to share is that there is a free 14-day trial. So if you are thinking that this might be of use to you and you'd like to kind of play with it a little bit, on the QSR website at www.qsrinternational.com, you can download a full complete version for 14 days. For students, there are discounted student licenses available, and you can find out more through the QSR website. Of course, there are full licenses available, and for those of you who might be in situations, organizations with multiple users, there are enterprise license agreements, and you certainly can contact your nearest QSR office. For those of you in North and South America, it would be americas@qsrinternational.com. There are also offices in the UK, Australia, Japan, and Kuala Lumpur. So you certainly can follow up with members of our sales team to be able to help you look at options and make decisions based on your needs. QSR, of course, wants you to be successful in using their software and getting done what you need to do. So there are resources available from a YouTube channel where there are all kinds of videos that will walk you through how to do specific things when you're looking at completing your research. There are user communities, from a forum on the QSR website to Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, where you have a lot of information being shared. The forum on the QSR website is very nice, with users from all over the world asking questions, answering each other's questions. It's also where you can make suggestions to the developers of NVivo, and they do check that site as they're working on updating and upgrading NVivo. The online help documents that you can access from within the file option, the file choice in NVivo, are incredibly helpful when you need step-by-step guidance as to how to go walk through a particular piece, and to get ideas about how to use it or options as you're using NVivo. The free webinars such as this one, Meet NVivo, certainly can be incredibly helpful to get you started, and then pick up with some of the other resources. And of course, there are trainers and consultants all across the world. There are listed platinum trainers on the QSR website where you could turn to for additional assistance. All right, let me go ahead here. For those of you who do have to step out, I do want to thank you for being with me. For those of you who have asked questions or would like to ask questions, please send them through the question panel, and momentarily I'll begin going through those questions and answering them.